Curse of the Pink Panther is a 1983 comedy film. It is a continuation of the Pink Panther series of films started by Blake Edwards in the early 1960s. The film was one of two produced concurrently following the death of the series star Peter Sellers. Whereas the previous film Trail of the Pink Panther made use of unused footage of Sellers as Inspector Clouseau, Curse attempted to relaunch the series with a new lead, Ted Wass, as bumbling American detective Clifton Slay, assigned to find the missing Inspector Clouseau. The film features a cameo by Roger Moore as Clouseau himself at the end of the film. This was David Niven's final film appearance, and he died shortly before its release. This film marked Herbert Lom's sixth outing as Chief Inspector Dreyfus. He would reprise the role one last time in Son of the Pink Panther. The prized Pink Panther jewel would not return until the Pink Panther reboot in 2006. This film featured the sixth Panther appearance of Clouseau's trusty manservant Kato. Kato and Dreyfus debuted in Eight Shot in the Dark. More than 2 decades later, Ted Wass would direct co-star Robert Wagner in episodes of 2.5 Men. The film was a box office bomb and got negative reviews. Plot: while investigating the theft of the Pink Panther diamond, Chief Inspector Jack Clouseau, hailed as France's greatest detective, disappeared at sea during a plane crash. His former superior, Chief Inspector Charles Dreyfus, is pressured to oversee Operation Paragon and utilize Interpol's fictitious Huxley 600 computer Aldous to find the world's greatest detective, to solve the crime. What the world at large does not realize is that Clouseau was actually an inept fool whose cases were solved more through luck than actual detective genius, and that his accident-prone incompetence led Dreyfus to a series of nervous breakdowns. Anxious never to see or hear from his nemesis again, Dreyfus sabotages the computer to select the world's worst detective. This turns out to be Sergeant Clifton Slay, an incompetent officer of the New York Police Department. Slay, who is descended from a long line of cops, sees the case as an opportunity to prove his worth. Dreyfus and his long-suffering assistant, Sergeant François Duraval, soon find that the sabotage has worked a bit too well. While slightly more intelligent and capable, Slay is just as clumsy as Clouseau. When Slay meets Dreyfus for the first time in his office, Slay trips over his own feet and knocks Dreyfus into his wheeled office chair, which rolls out onto the balcony, and sends Dreyfus falling 3 stories into a pond below, breaking his left leg. Slay visits Dreyfus in the hospital to apologize, but accidentally ends up hurting Dreyfus more by falling over the hospital equipment holding Dreyfus' leg. As he sets out on the case, Sergeant Slay encounters many people who prefer Clouseau not return. These include the inspector's former manservant Kato, who attacks Slay when he breaks into the Clouseau Museum. Kato now operates Dreyfus, who attempts to kill Slay numerous times like he tried to kill Clouseau, and Bruno Langlois, the mafia boss from the previous film. Langlois orders several assassination attempts on Slay, but the detective's bumbling nature allows him to survive. Ultimately, Langlois, along with his henchmen, have a final showdown with Slay in a dark alley. Julieta Shane, an employee of the enigmatic Countess Chandra, comes to Sly's rescue and manages to defeat Langlois and his thugs in street combat. Slay also meets Sir Charles Lytton, who is now married to Clouseau's former wife Simone, and is accompanied by his nephew George. Sir Charles was the notorious jewel thief known as the Phantom, though only Clouseau was convinced of this. The Phantom would steal items of jewelry and leave behind a monogrammed white glove. Eventually the trail leads Slay to a health spa run by Countess Chandra. There he meets famous British film star, Roger Moore, who speaks with a rather odd French accent and falls about all over the place. Seeing a photograph of the inspector, Countess Chandra tells Slay that Clouseau visited her several months ago, but claimed his name was Gino Rossi. She recalls he was looking for a good plastic surgeon and she recommended one. Slay concludes, erroneously, that Clouseau stole the Pink Panther diamond, underwent plastic surgery, and changed his name to Gino Rossi. The real jewel thief's body was found washed up on shore after he was shot to death. It is believed that Clouseau was killed for the diamond. Anxious to be rid of Slay, Dreyfus announces that Slay has solved the mystery and officially closes the case, though it is clear that Dreyfus does not believe that this is what happened. In a final irony, as Dreyfus sets fire to Gino Rossi's photograph, happy to be rid of Clouseau once and for all, he accidentally sets fire to his office. Slay runs in and attempts to put out the fire with a hose, only to accidentally hit Dreyfus with the water, the force of which pushes him onto his balcony, and Dreyfus again falls 3 stories into the pond below. Film star Roger Moore was, in fact, Clouseau after very extensive plastic surgery. Clouseau has become Countess Chandra's lover and partner in crime. When Clouseau and Chandra open her hidden wall safe to admire the Pink Panther, they discover they have been robbed, and a white monogrammed glove has been left behind. "Swine phantom," mutters Clouseau, knowing only too well who is responsible for the theft. In the final scene, Sir Charles, Simone, and George are sailing away on board their yacht, with the Pink Panther jewel, which Simone has stolen. In a post-credits scene, the animated Pink Panther is shown stealing the Pink Panther jewel. Realizing it's heavy, he slips out of the shot and drops the diamond off-screen, shattering it. The credits roll shortly afterwards. Cast: Ted Duas as Sergeant Clifton Slay, David Niven as Sir Charles Lytton, Herbert Lum as Commissioner Charles Dreyfus, Robert Lodger as Bruno Langlois, Joanna Lumley as Countess Chandra, Cappuccini as Lady Simone Lytton, Robert Wagner as George Lytton, Burt Kwok as Cato Fong, Leslie Ash as Giulietta Shane, Andre Marin as Francois, Ed Parker as Mr. Chong, Bill Nye as Ent Doctor, Roger Moore as Inspector Jack Clouseau, Harvey Korsman as Professor August Balls, Liz Smith as Martha, Michael Elphick as Valencia Police Chief, Hugh Fraser as Dr. Stang, Joe Morton as Charlie, Denise Crosby as Denise, Bruno's Mole. Production. The film was shot at the same time as linking footage for Trail of the Pink Panther. Curse of the Pink Panther had been the original working title for what became Revenge of the Pink Panther, made 5 years previously. In Trail of the Pink Panther, Joanna Lumley had been a TV investigative reporter. Here she is cast as the aristocratic owner of a health spa, Countess Chandra. Dudley Moore had been Blake Edwards' original choice for the role of Det. Clifton Slay, but Moore turned it down, not wishing to commit to a series following the success of Arthur. Edwards suggested Rowan Atkinson for the role, but the studio rejected the choice, as he was unknown outside of Britain at the time. John Ritter was also in discussion for the role before it fell to Ted Wass. David Niven, Cappuccini and Robert Wagner had been the stars of the original Pink Panther film. This was Niven's final film and, due to his failing health, his voice was dubbed by impressionist Rich Little during post-production. Roger Moore's scenes were shot during a break from shooting Octopussy. He was credited as Turk Thrust 2, a nod to actor Brian Forbes, who was credited as Turk Thrust in the 1964 Clouseau film, A Shot in the Dark. Clouseau turning to a life of crime was an element borrowed from Peter Sellers' unfilmed romance of the Pink Panther script, which had, in the second of the script's 2 drafts, Clouseau leaving the force and joining his new wife, the arch-criminal, the Frog, in a life of crime. A new arrangement for the Pink Panther theme tune with heavy synthesizers is present, to align the theme with 80s music trends. The opening and closing credits were made by Marvel Productions, which was worked on the Sunbow Productions animated series based on Hasbro properties. The original tagline on posters was, "He's been bombed, blasted and plugged in the parachute. Is this any way to welcome the world's greatest detective?" Impact. Curse of the Pink Panther had gotten negative critical reviews and was a box office bomb, with the general consensus being that attempting to continue the Pink Panther series without Peter Sellers was foolhardy. Critics and fans agree, though, that one positive aspect of the film was Moore's cameo, which makes quite a contrast to his usual part of suave and sophisticated hero, falling about, mincing his words, and wearing an ice bucket for most of his scenes. Moore displays a previously unknown talent for physical and verbal comedy. Edwards was unhappy with MGM, UA Entertainment Co. for not promoting the film properly, ultimately suing them for $180 million for willfully sabotaging the film. After much legal wrangling, it was settled out of court. Wass' option for several sequels was never taken up, though another unsuccessful attempt at reviving the series occurred 10 years later with Son of the Pink Panther, starring Roberto Benigno as Klauso's illegitimate son. A commercially successful revival, The Pink Panther, starring Steve Martin as Klauso, was released in 2006. Though this film is a rebooting of the franchise rather than a continuation or remake. Martin once again played Klauso in The Pink Panther 2, though that film was not as successful as the first.